Did really well. I thought we were competitive. I thought we played with energy in the first 5 minutes. And then, when they kind of went on their first run.
The Indiana Fever's recent 80-61 loss to the expansion Golden State Valkyries was a devastating blow, not just for the scoreline, but for the way it exposed deep-seated issues within the team. The game, meant to be a triumphant moment for Caitlin Clark's return from a groin injury, turned into a showcase of everything that went wrong on the court and in the leadership. The Fever, coming off impressive victories against top teams like the Las Vegas Aces and Minnesota Lynx, were expected to dominate at home in a sold-out Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Instead, they crumbled under the pressure of an expansion team that played with the poise of seasoned veterans. The fallout, particularly Coach Stephanie White's post-game comments, has sparked intense debate about her leadership and whether she's the right fit to guide this talented roster. The game started with promise. For the first 5 minutes, the Fever displayed the energy and competitiveness that had defined their recent success. They moved the ball well, played with intensity, and looked like the team that had just won the Commissioner's Cup. But when the Valkyries went on their first significant run, something shifted. The Fever's momentum faltered, and they seemed to deflate, unable to recover their early spark. Caitlin Clark herself noted this in her post-game remarks, expressing confusion about why the team lost its edge so quickly. The offense, which had been a strength in recent games, became stagnant, managing only 31% shooting from the field and a dismal 6 for 27 from beyond the arc. The team's struggles were most evident in the second and fourth quarters, where they combined for just 19 points, an unacceptable output for a team with such offensive firepower. Defensively, the Fever were equally disjointed. They allowed the Valkyries to grab 10 offensive rebounds in the second half alone, giving up second and third chances that turned into easy points. The scouting report, which should have guided their defensive strategy, seemed ignored. Players failed to execute the game plan, struggling with personnel matchups and allowing the Valkyries to exploit their weaknesses. The energy in the arena, electric at tip-off, turned to stunned silence as fans watched their team unravel. This wasn't just a bad game. It was a complete breakdown of the system that had carried the Fever to recent highs. The most puzzling aspect of the loss was Coach Stephanie White's decisions. She made significant changes to the starting lineup, most notably benching Lexi Hull, a consistent defender and three-point threat who had been a starter for most of the season. Hull's presence had been crucial in complementing Clark's playstyle, providing floor spacing and defensive reliability. Instead, White opted to start Ari McDonald at point guard alongside Clark, forcing Clark to play off-ball at small forward, a position that didn't suit her strengths. Clark, a generational talent known for her ability to control the game as a point guard, was reduced to running off screens and setting picks, roles that limited her ability to create. The offense, which had been fluid and dynamic during the Commissioner's Cup run, looked clunky and uncoordinated. Analysts noted that the new lineup seemed unprepared, as if they hadn't practiced together, and the lack of chemistry was glaring. White's decision to limit Clark's minutes also raised eyebrows. In her first game back from injury, Clark was the team's best chance to spark the offense, yet she spent significant time on the bench. Every time she sat, the Fever's momentum stalled, and the offense struggled to generate open looks. The team relied on contested shots rather than the fluid ball movement that had defined their earlier success. Hull's absence from the starting lineup was particularly costly. Her three-point shooting had opened driving lanes for Clark, and her defensive hustle had helped contain opposing offenses. Without her, the Fever lost their identity, and the Valkyries capitalized on every mistake. The post-game press conference only intensified the frustration. White stood at the podium and delivered a scathing assessment of her team, pointing to a lack of competitive fire and poor attention to detail. She criticized their inability to execute the game plan and questioned their discipline, suggesting that the team's focus wasn't the issue, but their execution was. Her comments were blunt, describing the team's performance as undisciplined and lacking energy. While she acknowledged that it's the coach's job to figure out why these inconsistencies persist, she stopped short of taking responsibility for her own decisions. There was no mention of the questionable lineup changes, no explanation for benching Hull, and no acknowledgement that moving Clark out of her natural position might have contributed to the offensive struggles. Instead, White placed the blame squarely on the players, a move that shocked fans and analysts alike. In contrast, Caitlin Clark took a different approach in her own post-game comments. She owned the team's failures, admitting that they struggled to execute the coaching staff's instructions and failed to follow the scouting report. She spoke about the need for every player to look in the mirror and find ways to improve, emphasizing a collective responsibility. Clark's maturity stood out, especially for a young player in her first game back from injury. She didn't point fingers or make excuses. Instead, she focused on solutions and the importance of regrouping for the next game. Her leadership was evident, even as she acknowledged the mental challenges of returning from injury and adapting to limited minutes. The contrast between White's finger-pointing and Clark's accountability raised serious questions about the team's leadership. White's comments seemed to contradict the playing style that had made Clark so effective. Clark thrives when she has the freedom to create and facilitate, but White's system appeared rigid, prioritizing control over every possession. This philosophical clash was evident in the game's outcome. The Fever's offense, which had been a thing of beauty during their championship run, was unrecognizable against the Valkyries. The motion offense that had created open looks and easy scoring opportunities was replaced by predictable, stagnant play. Players like Kelsey Mitchell, who had been a reliable scoring threat, struggled to find their rhythm, and Alia Boston's dominance in the paint was underutilized. The decision to bench Hull was particularly baffling. Hull had been a key piece in the Fever's success, providing the floor spacing and defensive intensity that complemented Clark's game. Her absence allowed the Valkyries to collapse on Clark, clogging driving lanes and forcing difficult shots. The experiment with McDonald at point guard also backfired. While McDonald had been a spark plug off the bench during Clark's absence, starting her alongside Clark disrupted the team's flow. The two players didn't have enough game reps together to build chemistry, and the offense suffered as a result. Analysts pointed out that practice reps can't replicate the intensity and pace of actual games, and White's decision to start an untested lineup in such a high-stakes game was a critical misstep. The loss exposed deeper issues within the team. Just a week earlier, the Fever had been on top of the world, defeating elite teams and winning their first Commissioner's Cup. They had found their identity, with Clark facilitating, Hull spacing the floor, Boston dominating the paint, and Mitchell providing an offensive spark. That success came when the team played to its strengths, allowing each player to thrive in their natural role. Against the Valkyries, everything that had worked was abandoned. The lineup changes, limited minutes for Clark, and benching of Hull destroyed the team's chemistry and left them looking lost. The Valkyries, an expansion team that shouldn't have been competitive, took advantage of every mistake, going on a 30-12 run over 13 minutes to seize control of the game. White's post-game comments only deepened the divide. By publicly calling out her players for their lack of effort and discipline, she risked alienating the locker room. Leadership requires accountability, not just from players, but from coaches as well. White's failure to acknowledge her own role in the loss, whether it was the lineup changes, the decision to move Clark off the ball, or the restricted minutes, undermined her credibility. Her comments about the team's lack of competitive fire felt particularly harsh, especially given the effort players like Clark and Hull had shown in previous games. Clark's own remarks about the team's struggles were far more measured, focusing on collective improvement rather than blame. The loss to the Valkyries wasn't just a bad night. It was a symptom of larger problems. The Fever had the talent to compete with anyone in the league, as evidenced by their wins over the Aces and Lynx. Clark is a generational player capable of elevating her teammates when given the opportunity. Boston's development in the paint and Mitchell's scoring ability provide a strong foundation. Hull's versatility and defensive hustle add balance to the roster, but talent alone isn't enough. The system must allow players to succeed, and the coach must make decisions that maximize their strengths. White's rigid approach and questionable rotations suggest a disconnect between her vision and the team's potential. The question now is whether White is the right coach to lead this team forward. Her comments in the press conference revealed a reluctance to take responsibility, which could erode trust in the locker room. Clark's leadership, on the other hand, showed a maturity beyond her years. She spoke about using her injury experience to become a better teammate and leader, demonstrating a willingness to grow and adapt. Her flashes of brilliance in the third quarter, scoring, rebounding, and dishing out assists, showed what she's capable of when given the chance to control the offense. But those moments were too fleeting, stifled by a system that didn't play to her strengths. Some analysts have suggested that the Fever face a critical decision: stick with White's system or build around Clark's unique talents. The two approaches seem at odds, with White favoring a controlled, structured offense and Clark thriving in a freer, more dynamic system. Forcing Clark to play off-ball or limiting her minutes undermines her ability to impact the game. Similarly, benching players like Hull, who complement Clark's style, disrupts the team's chemistry. The Fever's success earlier in the season came when they embraced their identity as a fast-paced, free-flowing team. Abandoning that identity against the Valkyries led to their downfall. The stakes are high for the Fever. In 2023, they averaged just 4,000 fans per home game. Clark's arrival has transformed the franchise, packing Gainbridge Fieldhouse with sold-out crowds and generating unprecedented excitement. But continued missteps could jeopardize that progress. Fans and analysts are calling for accountability, not just from the players but from the coaching staff and front office. Clark's talent is undeniable, and her ability to elevate her teammates is clear when she's put in the right position. Boston and Mitchell have proven they can be cornerstone players, and Hull's contributions on both ends of the floor are invaluable. The pieces are there for something special, but only if the system and leadership align with the team's strengths. As the season approaches its halfway point, the Fever have a chance to regroup and rebuild. The talent is in place, and the potential is undeniable. Clark's return, despite the loss, showed glimpses of her brilliance, and players like Boston and Mitchell remain critical to the team's success. But the coaching staff must make smarter decisions, from lineup choices to in-game adjustments. White needs to take accountability for her role in the team's struggles and build a system that maximizes her players' strengths. If she can't, the Fever may need to consider whether a change in leadership is necessary to unlock this team's full potential. The loss to the Valkyries was a wake-up call. It exposed the flaws in the current system and raised questions about whether White's approach is the right fit for this roster. The Fever have the talent to compete at the highest level, but they need a coach who can harness that talent and put players in positions to succeed. Clark's leadership and maturity offer hope for the future, but the team's success will depend on whether the coaching staff and front office can make the necessary changes. The clock is ticking, and the Fever's window to build something special is now. Whether they can seize that opportunity remains to be seen,